Welcome to the new My Football Club podcast. Hello and welcome to the new My Football Club podcast. I'm your host, Augustine Sasso. You can email me at augustine.sasso@myfootballclub.co.uk. First of all, happy holidays and a Merry Christmas to all. I've got a short, fun show for you today. I spoke to Charles last week, and we discussed the Hayes and Yetting win, but we were very pessimistic that the Staines game was going to go on. Sure enough, it was postponed. And Charles and I had a laugh at the possibility that the Maidstone game on Tuesday was going to be played. It wasn't. So another week off for the lads. Here then is a little chat. Again, more about the weather than football.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, I guess the first thing is a recap of last Saturday's game against Hayes and Yetting. I saw a second goal by Callum Willick, and I thought it was fantastic. He was on the ground, and I guess he just tipped it in. But it was a great game, to get back after, 2 weeks off. What was your take on that game?
Well, it had a number of pleasing factors. The first one being that the guys didn't show any rustiness at all. They maybe started a little slowly, but they soon got into the groove, and they really put Hayes to the sword and did a very, very thorough professional job. But of course, Hayes are a Blue Square Premier side, and last season they'd beaten the Fleet home and away in the league, so they were superior to us, and certainly when we played them. So it was a very satisfying performance and a result against a more senior team that we've not overcome in the past, and you really wouldn't have known that we were a division below them. On the day, we played extremely well. Hayes got one or two very experienced players, including Jamie Hand and Peter Holmes, who both played for the Fleet. And they tried to get Hayes moving, but they didn't really seem to click. And we took full advantage of that. And we had players like Ram Marwa, who was in the middle of the mix in midfield, breaking up what they were trying to do. But all credit to Peter Holmes. He strode forward and put them in the lead with an excellent goal from midfield. But then we showed character, determination, and no little quality to come back and win the game. And in the end, it was a comfortable 3-1 scoreline. And Callum Willick grabbed two very good goals. As you say, one of them was when he was on the floor. He spent most of his time with his back to goal. On this occasion, he was not only back to goal, but he was on the floor as well. Still managed to put the ball in the net. Plus, there was a very good leveller from Joe Howe from the edge of the box. And, the Fleet have only brought one player in during the season since we got our fixtures underway, and that is Joe Howe. And he's proven to be a very capable and important member of the squad. So, all in all, a very pleasing performance, and it puts the Fleet in the hat for the next round, and it's going to be a tie away to Droylsden, who they did play home and away in the Blue Square Premier when both sides were in that a couple of seasons ago. And Droylsden means the Fleet have got a long away trip up to East Manchester. They could have had more local encounters, but it wasn't to be. So they've got a long away trip to look forward to, but hey, as Ram Marwa told me after the game, we fear no one.
Boy, I think that definitely describes them now, and especially a road game. I was following the FA Cup game, Droylsden against Leyton Orient, And so that was a wild game where they were ahead at one point, and then Leyton Orient scores 6 goals in extra time. The additional time. So that must have been a really great match and a really great test.
I really don't know what happened there. I didn't see that game, but I read the reports about it, and I think Orient were determined to get something out of that game, and they really pushed it on in extra time. But Droylsden, they're going okay in their league, and they're in a similar position to the way the Fleet are going in the Blue Square South. And it could be a pretty tight encounter up there. But, as I've said before, one of the things that marks the Fleet out this season is the degree of professionalism they show in their preparation and their approach to games, which, Liam is continuing to approach games in exactly the same way as he did in the Blue Square Prem. And they'll carry that into the tie at Droylsden. And it's a long journey, that's the worst part of it, but I don't have any trepidation about that trip at all. We'll treat them with respect. But as you say, any game on the road, the Fleet this season, they're unbeaten on their travels so far, and you've got to fancy their chances, so bring it on.
Yep, that's what I say. Well, on to tomorrow's game. I'm assuming that game is still on against Staines.
Well, that's a very good point. I spoke to the Staines commercial manager this afternoon, and she was telling me that from her office she could look out onto perfect pitch, blue skies, everything's hunky-dory. But I've just been out and just returned home, and the roads around here in North Kent are like sheet ice. The temperature is between 4 and 5 degrees below zero.
Wow. And
we're told that the snow is going to start to come our way tomorrow morning. Now, the lady at Staines told me that there's going to be a pitch inspection around about 10:30. Now, maybe the snow's not arrived by then, in which case they say, no, conditions are perfect. The Fleet could travel, and then they could arrive and find themselves in a blizzard. So it's going to be a very, very interesting morning. I urge all Fleet fans to stand by their Fleet Forum access, to have their mobiles ready, and to spread the word if the game is cancelled, because from all the announcements on TV and radio this evening, it seems that the next 48 hours we're going to see an awful lot of snow, certainly in these parts. And it's coming up from the west of England, and of course Staines is about 60 miles west of here, so they could get it before we do. So the game may or may not be on.
Well, in case it is on, we can talk a little bit about the team. They're mid-table. I don't know much about them. I actually didn't look them up on their website.
You say they are about mid-table. They're a little bit below the Fleet, but of course the Fleet have now got some games in hand, having had fixtures cancelled because of their FA Cup run, and indeed the weather's claimed a couple of games too. So they're up there around about the same position as the Fleet. They came to Stonebridge Road and they got a draw very early in the season. And it seems that their results so far have been characterised by an awful lot of draws, both home and away. So they're something of a draw specialist with not as many wins as I'm sure their manager, Steve Corduroy, would like. Because if they could have turned some of those draws into wins, they'd be certainly in the playoff places by now. But they've got aspirations, they've got a tight squad. I think they've still got Ali Shaban, who was the man who scored the goal that gave them the point at Stonebridge Road, and a very good goal it was too. I distinctly remember that one. He ripped through the centre of the Fleet defence, rather like Peter Holmes did last week. And that's something that has been a rarity for Fleet fans to watch because Paul Lorraine and his partner now, Kim Easton, and before that, Dean Pooley, they weren't letting anybody get through, but certainly Ali Shaban got between Pooley and Lorraine early in the season, and I would imagine that Liam would be keen to tighten the defence to not allow that to happen again tomorrow. And I know that the lads were training last night. The conditions here were pretty grim weather-wise, but they were training at Stonebridge Road last night, and I'm sure the plans are in place to shut that door on the Staines attack, and at the same time find some gaps at the back to exploit.
Right, I agree. We can maybe move ahead to Tuesday's game, which I guess now...
I'm sorry, I've got to laugh at even the prospect of it, because if we get the snow that's predicted, one of two things are going to happen. It's either going to freeze and it's going to stick around for a while, and they're telling us the big freeze is likely to continue, or it's going to thaw and there's going to be an awful lot of water floating around as the snow dissipates down the drains. Well, Maidstone play their games at Ashford Town's ground, homeland in East Kent, and it is notorious for having games cancelled because the pitch is generally underwater, under snow, under ice, or some other freak of nature. And in the past, they've probably experienced more cancelled matches or more postponed games than any other club in the county. So if we do get this heavy downpour of snow this weekend, I would think the chances of that game going ahead are slender. As much as we'd all like to have a game against Andy Ford, our former manager, who's now in charge of Maidstone, I think, the prospects of it taking place at Ashford may be slim if this weather closes in. And it does beg the question, should the Kent Senior Cup be arranged in a different way? And I've often been a proponent of having the early rounds of the Kent Senior Cup played in a kind of group system, and maybe have 4 groups, north, south, east, west, or something along those lines, and have a pre-season tournament with just the semi-finals and in the middle of the season, and the final at the end of the season. And for instance, if you had that, you could have a pre-season kind of mini-league that players could be allowed to feature even if they're trialists, for instance. And it could have, games like the Fleet against Tunbridge or Bromley or whatever, as Kent Senior Cup games, but also pre-season games when the weather's good. So I think it may be something that the Kent Senior Cup organising committee might need to look at, because the allure of the Kent Senior Cup has diminished over the last few years, because sides have put out weakened sides, reserve teams. Plus, there's also the issue that if a player gets booked or sent off, the penalties are Kent County penalties as opposed to the FA. And you could find players suspended not for 3 games, but maybe for 35 days. So they're banned for 7 weeks, as opposed to, maybe missing 3 games if they're shown a straight red card. So, they need to adjust these things. And then maybe they'll get sides like Gillingham, Millwall and Charlton showing an interest in coming back into the Kent Senior Cup.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I would think maybe the only argument against that is that since this would take place in pre-season, as you say, you're going to have trialists. Maybe it might not be seen as being taken seriously. I don't know, because
how serious is it taken now?
Yes.
Some clubs clearly don't take it seriously, and it just becomes a distraction, and it's played at a time in the season when the weather can affect where the games are played.
Yes. Well, I guess we should write them a letter or...
Well, some dialogue has gone on, and as I say, I think it's possible that the new people organising the Kent Football Association